Hi, hello, hi, and welcome to Disney's True Canon, a brand new series that takes a deep dive into Disney's extended lore to determine what is actually canon to each of their animated franchises. There is a distinct possibility that this gets fairly complicated, as Disney has connected a lot of movies together over the years. Some have TV series, others even have lore connected to video games like Kingdom Hearts, and a lucky few even have extended lore through their Disney park attractions. And that's not even getting into live action remakes, prequel stories, books, Disney Cruise Line stage shows, and so on. To narrow this down, the true canon is only going to be things related directly to the animated version, which means the original animated movie, any sequel films, and any cartoons based on the animated movie, and if necessary, the extended lore from the ride. For the first episode of this series, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a Disney classic, Cinderella. So, what is the canon story of Cinderella, beloved princess featured in Disney's Magic Kingdom? Let's start at the very beginning with Walt Disney's version of the classic tale of Cinderella. Cinderella's dad marries Lady Tremaine, and then the dad dies, leaving Cinderella alone with her stepmother and her two stepsisters, Anastasia and Gisela. We then time skip to Cinderella being a young adult and see that she's become the servant girl of the house. An announcement about the royal ball is received, the stepsisters ruin Cinderella's dress, and the fairy godmother steps in to get Cinderella to the ball. Cinderella goes to the ball, dances with Prince Charming, loses her glass slipper, and then gets locked into her room. The king's right-hand man ends up at Lady Tremaine's house, and one of his underlings tries to slip her on the stepsisters. It fails, and eventually Cinderella makes her way down from her bedroom after being rescued by Jock and Gus, at which point Lady Tremaine breaks the glass slipper that the king's men had. Cinderella reveals the other one, and obviously it fits, and she and Charming go on their happily ever after. That's the main story, right? That's the story that the parks care about. But Cinderella has two sequels. In Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True, the first story is told a week after Cinderella and Charming get back from their honeymoon, and the other two stories don't really have a specified time after that, though for context, the second story follows Jock Jock, and the third story follows Anastasia. In Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, the movie starts with a song that mentions that it's been a year since Cinderella and Charming got married.
I'd end up here at the end of a perfectly perfect year.
Would my perfect
Now, spoilers for Cinderella 2 and 3, I guess. Anastasia falls in love with a local baker in the second story of Dreams Come True. In fact, there's a portrait of them together during the credits of Cinderella 3. In Cinderella 3, the stepsisters get a hold of Fairy Godmother's wand and turn her into a statue. Lady Tremaine then uses the wand to go back in time to just before Cinderella produces the second glass slipper, and through that one little ripple, she tries to have Anastasia take the place of Cinderella for Prince Charming, which goes into its whole own little story that ultimately doesn't really have to be explained here. You should just go watch it, honestly. The problem here is that because of the events in Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3, these two movies cannot be in the same timeline. If Cinderella 3 actually followed Cinderella 2, then Anastasia wouldn't have her complaint of "I want someone to love me for me," because she'd already have that with the baker. However, if we worked off the assumption that Cinderella 3 comes in the timeline before Anastasia's story in Cinderella 2 because of the time travel aspect, then we have a similar result stemming from a different problem. In the second story of Dreams Come True, the whole point of that story is that Anastasia learns to stand up to Lady Tremaine so that she can go to Cinderella's ball with the baker. In a timeline where Cinderella 3 happens first, she's already used magic on her mom and sister. So, cross that possibility completely out, there's no way that's how it went down. Which leaves us with what I believe is most likely a canon with a split timeline. In the original timeline, we have Cinderella 1 and Cinderella 2 happen as shown in their movies. The Tremaines never get Fairy Godmother's wand, and Anastasia is happy with the baker. However, as hinted at in the end credits of Cinderella 3, Anastasia and the baker do eventually meet in the second timeline as well. The thing is, Lady Tremaine and Gisela end up being turned into frogs near the end of Cinderella 3, and they do come back to their full human personas at the end of the credits, but in a timeline where that happens, it seems very unlikely that Anastasia would have to deal with trying to get her mother's permission before being able to date the baker, even if it's just, for that one night at ball. However, the fact that Anastasia never mentions the baker throughout the movie means that the second timeline is Cinderella 1 and Cinderella 3. There is no way that she goes through with a plan to marry the prince in a timeline where she's found her true love. As far as we're aware, I guess. It's never fully confirmed, but it sure does seem like it. I think if all three movies were to be in a timeline together, then Cinderella 1 happens as normal up until Twist in Time happens, thereby breaking the second glass slipper, and then the rest of that movie takes place as normal, and then Dreams Come True has similar events to Cinderella's first castle party as princess and Jock Jock turning into a human, but the last story about Anastasia and the baker would have to have some changes to work in the new timeline. That is the only way the timelines work without having to just go, oh, the writers reset Anastasia for the movie, since that feels like a major cop-out answer, and obviously they knew about the baker because, again, he's in the credits. Now, I do have to mention there are a handful of other stories featuring Cinderella, but it almost feels like Disney is scared to alter Cinderella's story too much compared to the other princesses, as a lot of the Disney princess stories end up focusing on the other princesses, with Cinderella stories not having full animation, or even just being a retelling of her original movie. One of the princess story movies does feature Cinderella trying to gather things for the king's birthday, but there's no real indication that it contradicts any of the three movies, or even where it would be in the timeline, so I guess it's canon? It just slots in somewhere? I don't even know if we know the king's birthday. Since this is a bit up to interpretation, I'll ask again. What is the canon story of Cinderella, beloved princess of Disney's Magic Kingdom? Definitely let me know in the comments down below, and like and subscribe while you're down there. As for me, I believe that with no retcons or tweaks to the story after the timeline change, Dreams Come True and Twist in Time cannot happen in the same timeline as is, which means I am fully on board with the split timeline. If you ignore Disney Plus not having them, then little stories like the King's Birthday fall into place under Cinderella's canon story, likely as stuff that would have been in the series that Dreams Come True was trying to spin off into. Thanks so much for watching. This was really fun to work on, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing another one, hopefully sooner rather than later. If you're still watching at this point, then let me know what Disney movie canon you think I should take on next, and I'll see you real soon. Bye!